Everybody, welcome back. It's Chuck Esposito with Jason McCormick. We're excited to be back. We're in our new home at Sunset Stations, Club Madrid, our radio booth here. It's kind of our home away from home right now. It's exciting for us to be back. I mean, it's like March in August with all these different sports that are going on. We've got stuff starting early in the day, going till late at night. Terrific atmosphere in our race and sports books, but it's just good to be back, and we're going to kind of dive in and give you a little bit more in-depth discussion of what happens not only on the other side of the counter, but what happens on our side of the counter. It's good to be back, Jay. It's good to see you.
Yeah, no, it's great to be over here at Sunset Station. A little different. Get out of the book.
You had to make that road trip today.
Get out of the noise of the book and be here in the booth and be able to talk, without that stuff going on in the background. But yeah, as you said, it's kind of been interesting as we've come back with the COVID and some of the protocol changes and things that we've gone on, as well as introducing the new term bubble. I guess the bubble will now be something new for all of us in the world of sports.
There used to be bubble teams. Now it's actually they're playing in the bubble.
Playing in the bubble. And the other thing, the other side of the business is the horse racing has really taken off since we've come back. Really been really busy on the horse racing side of things. We're going to have the Kentucky Derby coming up here September 5th, which is weird not being that first Saturday in May. So lots of things to look forward to and lots of things to talk about with all these sports going on.
It is. As you mentioned, it's been such a resurgence for horse racing. I think so many guests who didn't have sports until they came back kind of refound horse racing again, and I think it's great. I hope we can continue to build on that momentum. The mobile app, I think, is the key. I mean, we love it when the guests come out and enjoy everything that we have to offer at all of our properties, but you can be a social distancing hero, as we've said before, with the mobile app right now, with our STN mobile. Not only the sports side, but you have the race component as well, so you can pretty much sit on your couch, be in your living room, and play almost everything we have to offer in the book. So again, we love when you guys come out. We know that there's safety and health protocols in place, and we appreciate you guys following all of those with the queue lines and every other window, but the mobile app is a really good thing to have right now.
As well as you've got that Pay Near Me ability to fund your account. You've got the Play Plus with the ability to fund the account, and the time frames that these games are playing. With the fact that we are talking about the two bubbles in the East Coast being up there in Toronto and down in Orlando, getting a lot of early morning action games. We maybe can't get down to the book, or you're stuck at work early in the morning. That STN app's
and the new sign-up bonus as well, which is
we've got the
really
$50 sign-up
right
bonus available for all new sign-ups. So make sure you get down to the book, get yourself ready for football season. We talk about all these other sports that are going on, and we've got some things going on in college football that we'll get to here shortly as to what we're going to see from that standpoint. But we know that they are going to be they're preparing to play NFL football, and so get yourself ready and get away from standing in those lines on Sunday mornings.
And definitely fingers crossed. I think it's Yay Sportsbooks right now. Baseball, basketball, hockey all going on. I think the first thing we'll touch on is hockey. I love the format when they had the 24 teams in it. It gave teams like Chicago and Montreal, two of the original six, an opportunity to play in it, and most people didn't think they deserved it, but guess what? They both won those series, so they've made it interesting. Chicago's playing Vegas Golden Knights right now in that series, and I think, as you mentioned, it's a different type thing in the bubble. There's no more really home ice advantage where some teams like Vegas had such a big advantage. How are they going to play in the bubble setting? I like the way that they reseeded everything, and I think it's been great for hockey, and I love the early start times as well.
Well, to your point, talking about home ice advantage, we had Toronto and Edmonton being the host, and both of them were knocked out in the very first round in the very first series that went on there. So, yes, it's been very unique. I love what they did as far as the top teams that they didn't put into the series, the 1 through 4s, that then they made them play 3 games to then reseed themselves 1 through 4. We saw Philadelphia kind of pull the surprise and is now the number 1 seed in the East. Boston drops all the way down to the 4.
They actually flipped. Going into it, they were 1 and 4, and now they flipped.
I mean, I love that aspect because it kept those teams with something to play for, where we've seen somewhat of the reverse on the NBA side of things, where we have the teams that are locked into the number 1 in the East, locked into number 1 in the West, not having to play their guys for those 8 games they're in the bubble. So you're seeing a lot of LeBron James sitting, Giannis not having to play, some of the stuff like that. The Clippers, basically resting everybody on certain nights. So hockey didn't allow that to happen by making every one of those games competitive. And boy, hockey's been fantastic. I mean, we saw a 5 5 overtime game after Columbus had, in their series against Toronto, had multiple overtime games, a 3-0 comeback on both sides. Columbus and Toronto both coming back from big down, on the downside of things. And the West has been great. The Hawks, again, pulling that huge upset. The Knights have been dominant. I still think the Avalanche and Blues are going to have something to say on the West side of things before things are over. But, yeah, hockey's been absolutely fantastic. And we haven't seen anything crazy, we'll call it from a bookmaking standpoint. And the fact that we're setting the numbers, we knew we were going to have that adjustment for home ice, not giving the strong home ice, in particular to teams like Vegas, who, when they're at home, that home ice advantage is gigantic. Now being up in Edmonton, we're not seeing that as much as we are potentially.
Although the public is still backing them every game. I mean, as you mentioned, we're definitely Knights fans, but from our side of the counter, we're not Knights fans. We're rooting against them in most cases.
Yeah, and again, for the most part, it's been on that puck line. When you talk about favorites being able to win the puck line, cover the puck line, that's where those parlays start to hit and pay a lot of money for everybody. And Vegas is always on the end of that parlay minus that goal and a half. So when they cover the puck line, which they've been doing with pretty consistently, it's been a good day for the bettors.
Yeah, I think the atmosphere has been great. I agree with you. I loved that 5 overtime game. It was just so exciting because you knew what these guys were playing for. And then you think about what's going on, and it's a rematch. I mean, those two teams played last year where actually Columbus knocked Tampa out, where Tampa was the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference and got beaten 4 games by Columbus. In the East, you've got the Islanders against the Capitals, and it's Barry Trotz, the coach of the Islanders. He won a cup just a few years ago with the Capitals. So there's some great storylines in both conferences right now, but it's just fun. I mean, you look at Vegas, and they're so dominant right now. You can make a case that although I agree with you, I think St. Louis and Colorado are in that West discussion. Vegas right now is undefeated on that round robin. They went 3-0. They beat the Hawks in the first game pretty convincingly, I thought, and they're playing really well right now, even with the injury to Pacioretty. But I think the key for Vegas is it's not Fleury. It's been all Leonard. I mean, he's solidified that spot right now, and Fleury's kind of on the outside looking in. I think Leonard's going to have to really falter. Maybe the back-to-backs, you'll see Fleury get a start in there as well when they play game 3 and 4 on Saturday, Sunday. But right now, Leonard is a starting goalie for VGK.
The other big thing when you talk about the Knights and that they've looked fantastic, and they're most likely going to look fantastic against the Chicago Blackhawk team, as much as it hurts me to say that, as you and I are both diehard Chicago Blackhawk fans. This is the 12 seed as we were going into the playoffs, and they were able to pull an upset of Edmonton on their home ice. But
actually, the 23 seed. When you look at both, both conferences,
a very deep team. They're I think the second youngest team in the NHL. They've got their stars, Kane and Taves. Those guys are going to make the plays that they have to, and it really comes back to Crawford and net. And he has not particularly looked good. He's had a lot of soft goals on him, and the Knights really should shine in this series. I don't think the Hawks are truly a test for this Vegas Knights team. I think the test is going to come when they hit that Avalanche or Blues team. I think that those are going to be rough series, and I think you can make an argument that the West Finals, if it's one of those teams, it could be tougher than what they're going to see coming out of the East.
Oh yeah, I would agree with you. I think there's a really top heavy right now in the West, and we can kind of move over to basketball right now and touch on your point a little bit. I think when you look at hockey, there definitely is a home ice advantage, but not nearly as much as there is in pro basketball. I think in hockey, you could always have a goalie that stands on his head and can steal a game or steal a series. We've seen that in the history of hockey, that there's so much parity there. 1 versus 8 every year doesn't really matter. And we've seen that. We saw that last year with Columbus. But I think in the NBA, once you get to that playoff round, I think it is going to make a difference. We always talk about, again, kind of a phrase from our side of the counter is the zigzag theory. When it's a best of 5 or a best of 7, how teams do in their first 2 games at home. If a team loses both those games and they're going back home, we're not going to see that this year. So I think it's going to be a little bit different for us as we put those numbers up, and maybe a little bit different for the bettors. The one thing we have seen, and I know you and I talked about it off air, is the amount of scoring so far in these basketball games. If it's a lack of defensive intensity, if it's COVID related, or what, if it's more playground style where it's a little bit more wide open. There's a lot of points that are being scored, and that's the way the bettors have been playing it so far. So they've been cashing a lot of those over tickets.
Yeah, I don't know what the numbers are. I know that when we were talking about through the first 20 games or something like that it was like 16-4 or something like that on the overs. And I don't know what the reason for it is. It could be that they're not playing in huge arenas, that the backdrop is a little bit better for these guys shooting the three-pointers. Like you said, they're just up and down. There's no defensive intensity because you don't have the fans there screaming behind you. Well, you got the virtual fans, so I don't know if the players are seeing those virtual fans up on the wall, but it's kind of cool to watch with them with the virtual fans. But no, NBA's been, again, really, really good. The only thing that I think, that they didn't take from what the NHL did is it's been a little bit lack of competitiveness from the teams at the top. Now, the Western Conference 8-seed, 9-seed race has been absolutely awesome to watch. This Suns team, they're going to have a perfect 8-0 run.
Aren't we kind of rooting against the Suns, though?
The Grizzlies have, who'd have thought the Grizzlies were the 8-seed lock. Have really fallen apart in the bubble. They have to win today to get in. The Blazers and the Spurs have all played great down the stretch there. So, again, seeing some of those teams that had to play great makes it even that much better as we're going into next basketball season, anticipating what those teams might be able to do. But again, you have to take that with a grain of salt because some of the teams that they were playing weren't playing their starters or had guys out and that type of stuff. But NBA's been fantastic. I'm really, really looking forward to as we get down to the playoffs now of knocking out these 9 through 13 and getting to these top seeds playing each other. And obviously, we're looking at that Lakers-Clippers matchup, but I don't think you can count out that East side. I think Milwaukee and Toronto could even throw Boston in the mix. That bubble is going to bring it back to you talking about not having that home court advantage. I think that may open things up back a little bit more.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I agree with you. I think everyone talks about kind of LeBron against Giannis. Are we going to see Lakers Bucks in the final? But I think you can make a serious case for the Clippers and Raptors as well. So it is going to be fun.
Denver. I'll throw another one. Denver out there. They're playing very good as well.
We've touched a little bit on basketball and hockey right now. But baseball is the sport that came back first. So it was great for us to have that. You had that doubleheader on the 23rd of July, and then you went to a full slate on the 24th. But baseball's been good too. A lot of different starting times. Some teams that you expected to do well are playing well. Some teams aren't. The Astros have struggled, out of the gate, which is not entirely surprising. I think there was a lot of people that were rooting against them. You've had the postponed games for Florida and the Cardinals because of COVID. You've got the Cubs off to their best start in 50 years. So baseball's been interesting as well, I think, with some of the parity in that league with what we've seen through the first few weeks.
Yeah, I think when you talk about the success of what's happened in the NHL and NBA with the success that they've had in the bubbles and the lack of COVID positive tests and being able to continue to play games. We haven't seen that in baseball. Obviously, the Cardinals, I don't think they've played since July 29th, and you kind of wonder what that means to this team moving forward, and they're going to have to play 12 to 15 games as doubleheaders, which have now moved to
7-inning
doubleheaders. Yeah. Yeah, I actually, my youngest son asked me last night, Dad, I love the fact that the Dodgers are now on TV, watching the Padres games on the local TV, so a lot of baseball going on at home late at night watching baseball, but was asking me, as the season's gone on here, what's been the biggest surprise? What's been my team that has really faltered, and what's been the team that it wasn't expecting a whole lot that's playing a lot better, and you hit it on the head with the Astros. That's an incredible lineup. We knew what they were facing going into the season with we saw all the props on how many guys they were going to get hit, how many home runs were going to get hit, that type of stuff. And Bregman, Altuve, Springer have all kind of struggled. Correa, I think, is number 5 in the league in with batting average, so he hasn't struggled. They've had some struggles on the pitching side of things with Verlander going down.
And Cole this year, of course.
Him being rested.
Pitching staff was so different last year. They were so dominant on that side of it that makes up a big part as well.
But they've been probably the disappointment. That the team that you were looking to definitely win the West, be a representative in that playoffs. They're playing under 500 ball right now in that same division. The Oakland A's have been fantastic. I think they're only behind the Cubs from most wins.
Don't forget the A's. I think over the last 2 months last year had the best record in baseball. So I think we were anxious to see would that carry over, and it has. They've played extremely well for a team with a payroll that's the fraction of what the Cubs, Yankees, Astros have right now.
They do it every year. The A's do it every year. here. We're talking. It's the same thing. You go back and watch Moneyball to familiarize yourself what the A's are going to do each and every year. They do it without the payroll, and they just play out of their mind. And it's good that the Angels are there with Trout and Pujols and Ohtani healthy. Although he kind of stumbled out of the box on the mound and has now been reduced to not pitching anymore. But A's, that expected him to be there, not to shock. My biggest shock has been the two teams that I didn't think were going to win too many games at all. Right. I couldn't even tell them. But the Orioles and the Tigers.
Right, yep.
I mean, you look at those rosters and those lineups, and I got to dig deep to find out where these guys even came from and who they are. And they're playing pretty
But from
good.
our side of the counter, it's yay Orioles and yay Tigers.
We're constantly cheering for the Orioles, the Tigers, the Royals, the Pirates, those teams that are on the bottom side of things, as people like to play favorites, being the Yankees and Braves and Twins and those type of teams. So yeah, we're definitely cheering for those teams, but really shocked. I mean, right now the Tigers are sitting themselves in a playoff position, and the Orioles I think just took 2 games from the Phillies with their number 1 and 2 guys going. So good to see that competitive balance. You've got another team in the Marlins that suffered some of the COVID stuff, was the first team to go through the COVID stuff, is now coming back and they're playing competitive baseball. So yeah, baseball's been really, really good. I just hope that we can continue to see it play and get the Cardinals back on the field, and we don't have to kind of figure out and jump through hoops to keep all these teams playing. And as exciting as basketball and hockey are, we're going to have that carry us through September, maybe a little bit into October. We're going to have baseball through September and October, but come November, it's going to be a kind of a different world in the sports book, and we're going to be resting just on football. So let's enjoy what we've got with all this stuff going on. And we've still got, we've talked about baseball and basketball and hockey, and there's still a ton of stuff that really have been carrying us through the COVID mess in probably the early month of June and all the way through July, and MMA and golf. I mean, the PGA was fantastic. Right. MMA
NASCAR,
has been absolutely great.
KBO,
NASCAR,
Aussie football. There were so many
baseball.
things we added to the menu. You're absolutely right. I think the one big difference for baseball, real quick, before we touch on some other sports, is that usually it's that marathon, and you see teams that get out of the gate quickly, like you talked about Detroit and Kansas City and Baltimore, and you think that at some point during the season, they're just not going to be able to sustain. But this year it's a sprint. It's not a marathon. And so many teams are going to make the postseason in baseball that you can be that team that nobody expected, that you could be a team that makes the playoffs because of a 60-game schedule. Just remember last year, after 60 games, the Nationals never would have been that team to win the World Series because they weren't a playoff team after 60 games. What team will be a playoff team this year that no one expected, and what team won't because they didn't qualify in that 60 games?
There's not a whole lot of teams that you can count out right now. Maybe the Pirates you can count out, but other than that,
but a hot streak changes a lot of things with just that 60-game schedule.
The Dodgers, I think, right now are behind both the Padres and Rockies, who both look fantastic. That Padre pitching staff looks unbelievable. Fernando Tatis,
all those young kids now that they talked about are coming to the next level and playing really well. I know we're running out of time a little bit here. We've talked about all the sports that are playing, but the sports that aren't playing right now, that are set to start playing, is college football and pro football. And I guess for me with college football is, the biggest question, of course, is are we going to have any type of season? And if we do, what is that landscape going to look like? We know there's so many conferences that aren't playing right now. A little bit more optimistic with the Big 12, the SEC and ACC, which say they are going to play later start date. Still, knocking on wood that we see something like that. But college football right now, I think, is the major question mark out of all the sports. We kind of had an idea with basketball, baseball, and hockey, and I think pro football as well. But college football, it is so fluid and it changes every day. Again, just kind of hopeful we have something, but just don't know what it's going to look like at this point.
Yeah, selfishly, from a sports book standpoint, we want as many sports on the board as possible, giving people as many wagering options as possible. I think when you look at the difference between professional and a collegiate athlete of the sports that have come back, they're having to contain those guys. You look at the Cleveland Indians had a couple pitchers that broke their protocols and went out and had some drinks in Chicago, and they've been sent home for 3 days and essentially suspended by the team for violating that type of stuff. And I think the safety of the athlete, especially the student athlete, has got to come first. Not that I'm preaching to play one way or another. I just think that that's the difference between professional and college is how do you control these kids that are on these universities and not only protect the athletes that are playing football, but on their campuses, all the rest of the
everybody
students
involved, right?
that
Absolutely,
they're going back to, and I feel for those conferences that have to make those decisions. We'll, again, whether they come back or not, we'll be booking those games, looking forward to those couple conferences that might play, and I tell you what, it's going to make for a real interesting spring.
I was going to touch on the exact same thing.
If we get some of those conferences to play in the spring, and we find a way to have college basketball at the same time, and obviously the NBA and NHL coming back, it's going to, the spring might be the greatest time in the world. As
strange as November could be, you're absolutely right. The spring could be just like it is right now in August, where you've got all these sports going on, and it's so much different for us that it becomes a super exciting time in the book world. You'll have a lot more horse racing then, and maybe you get back to a traditional type, a Triple Crown type format. So there's a lot of stuff going on right now.
I think the one big question with college football, that if the bigger couple of the conferences play, obviously we know the Pac-12 and Big Ten have dropped out and talked about playing in spring ball. It's what happens from a college national champion.
Right.
You really not going to be able to declare a national champion in any format if there's some teams that play in the fall, some teams that play in the spring. And then as you look forward to next fall, if everything goes right, the conferences that played in the spring, are they going to have the ability to then start on time in the fall with the other conferences that start in the fall, and everything that's put on an equal playing field as we go into the fall of 2021 with all those conferences starting at the same time? So let alone all the eligibility rules and did I play and did I not, and who can potentially come back.
Not only that, but you think about one of the biggest events and was scheduled to be here, and that's the Pro Football Draft. I mean, that's in the spring. So if you've got all these kids that had played for the conferences that actually start up in September, and then the ones that start in the spring, how does that affect the draft? So there is just so many things, and I think that's a good kind of way to lead into pro football, which is right around the corner. No preseason this year, which for us was always a busy time. I know it's strange because it's preseason. You don't know who's playing in so many of the games. There's some big time names. Joe Burrow. He's going to be playing. Just basically what he learns in camp without any live game experience before he starts day one for Cincinnati. Could Tua have replaced Fitzpatrick and been the starting quarterback? He's not going to be given that chance. In Chicago, they went out and they traded for Nick Foles, but I think it'll be Mitchell Trubisky because Foles isn't going to have a chance to really win that job without the preseason. So I think there's a lot of different things going into pro football, and I think early on
the other big change. What about the other two quarterbacks that are flipping teams?
Which two?
I mean, Brady and Newton. I think I can't. Wait.
I
can't wait to watch. What happens there. Not to cut you off, but I mean, all those questions. It's great, right. And that's what's going to make it great, both on our side of the counter and on the betting side of the counter. Is kind of projecting out what you see and who's better prepared coming into those games, who is maybe normally doesn't play a good preseason. They just kind of walk through the motions, and are they going to be ready to go as they come out of the box? I think you have to look towards veteran teams.
And think about home field. I know we talked about it a little bit in basketball. We talked about it in hockey. But you think about football, what the impact is to a home game in Lambeau, a home game in Seattle, a home game in New England, or a home game in the Superdome. It is such an impact to those teams and the atmosphere and what it's worth to the point spread. It's not equal where every game at home is the same amount as far as the point spread goes for home field advantage. It is dramatically different in football. It could be by a point or two in some places, and they're not going to have those fans there. At least it doesn't look like at this point. So what is that impact to the line, and how do those teams play when you don't have that 12th man, say, in Seattle?
Oh, I have no idea. I mean, again, this is uncharted waters here that we're going into, and just watching an NFL game without fans is going to be weird.
Maybe virtual fans, right?
Right here in our own backyard, we built this huge, beautiful stadium as you drive down 15, and just to think about no fans being there to have the Raiders in their inaugural season, it's a shame. But no fans. It's going to be really, really weird.
It is. I think watching all these sports, I mean, number one, I'm just really excited that they're back. And I think, you touched on it. I really think basketball and hockey did it right. I mean, so far, very few, if any, positive tests. Baseball, they've had a couple of hiccups right now. We're looking forward to the starting football.
I'm not throwing shade down on baseball.
No, I understand, right.
Baseball, football, those
they have travel involved.
They couldn't
it's
do
a different, right? It's a different
rosters
atmosphere.
are too
Agreed.
big.
Agreed.
There's no way to do a bubble in those sports.
Right.
And I've actually even heard that as the NBA gets over with this and potentially is coming back in December that they may continue to play in a bubble. And
it might be at least for half the season.
A couple more cities that they open up.
I think hockey's looking, just tentative dates right now. They've talked about potentially coming back December 4th, which would give them a full 2 months off with the season ending around October 4th. Basketball, which I think they've always flirted with a little bit anyway, was the idea of starting their season on Christmas Day, not going as much against football and having some of that spring sport. But, I mean, for us guys, we are just excited that, sports are back. We're excited to be back. We love our new digs here at Sunset Station over in Club Madrid, the radio booth. We want everyone to come out and enjoy everything we have to offer. We know that there's a lot of safety and health concerns, and we want you guys to be as safe as possible, but come out and have some fun, and it's great to be back with you, Jay.
Oh, no, this is great. Like we said, we've been trying to talk about this. What can we do to get ourselves back and going, and the sports back on the screens has been fantastic. And like we said, the biggest thing, I think, as we have all these sports and we have football coming back is to make sure and get yourself prepared with that STN app. Get yourself signed up. Literally, it's a 5 to 7 minute process, sometimes less than that. At any of the racing sportsbook counter, minimum $50 to get yourself signed up, get yourself prepared, and you'll be able to fund that account with that outcome in the book. And as Chuck always says, we love having you. We love having you come and watch the games. We know that's not always possible, especially in today's environment. So get the app so that you can make sure and play these games and don't miss out on anything.
And don't forget the sign-up bonus. And, it's baseball, so we can talk about better, I think, or hockey season.
Nothing
right
but bet.
Nothing but bet. And, you can bet day or night. So coming out, see us at one of our Station Casinos Racing Sportsbook. For Jason McCormick, I'm Chuck Esposito. It's great to be back. We'll see you guys soon.